What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, July 26, 2017 here, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday, and another crazy weekend of what are they going to think of to mess up next year. As I speak, the Senate is now voting on a bill that will simply do a straight repeal of Obamacare and then provide a 2-year window to craft a replacement for it. And that, I hope it passes, because that would be a good thing. It would undo the damage of Obamacare, and it would force the health insurance companies to go back to competing for your business, lowering premiums, lowering deductibles, actually having to work to get you to buy their product. And that's a trend we need to go back to in this country, where businesses have to go out and win you as a customer rather than just go to the government and say, you make them buy our product, and we will donate to your campaign. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that, and hopefully that is going to pass here. The phones are working again today. For all of you who were so frustrated you couldn't call into the show yesterday, the phones are working. So 800-313-9443, and let's get into the news. Members of Congress are continuing to push for an investigation into James Comey for obstruction of justice related to Hillary Clinton's various crimes and corruptions, the email scandal. And again, this is from Representative Andy Biggs, who's a co-sponsor of the amendment, saying that they need to push back against all of the baseless accusations that are being used to basically distract President Trump and Republicans from trying to fulfill their agenda. And that's really all it is, all this Trump-Russia nonsense and trying to keep the president on the defensive so he can't go on out and actually work on giving the American people the things he promised and for which we voted. So let's get on over to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Things are beginning to unravel around her, especially with her IT expert being arrested at the Dulles airport yesterday. Now, Awan was one of the people who were caught up in this spy ring inside the Congress that were breaking into the computers of various congressmen and siphoning off information. And then, as it turned out, he became Debbie Wasserman Schultz, IT right hand, as it were. It was a part-time job for which he was paid $165,000 a year for a part-time job. Now, the FBI raided his home a few days ago. They confiscated a bunch of hard drives from him. And it was first reported the hard drives were smashed. And the part the corporate media left on out is they were not smashed when the FBI seized them. Somehow, they got destroyed while they were in police custody. Nobody knows who did it. Nobody's talking. Nobody's commenting on that one. But apparently, the current chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna Romney McDaniel, in an interview on Fox Business Network, said that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has been obstructing investigations at every level involving Imran Awan. She's just been trying to get in the way. And don't forget, we had that videotape of her literally threatening the Capitol Police that she would cut back their budget if they didn't back off this investigation into what was on her laptop and what was going on with the DNC computers. Now, of course, we're getting word that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is now starting to cooperate, and her lawyer is negotiating with the Capitol Police, trying to get some kind of a deal for which she will grant permission for the scanning of this laptop, her laptop, that seems to be key to all of this. Meanwhile, investigator Rod Wheeler in Washington, D.C. is dropping hints that there is some kind of a link between Awan and Seth Rich, that maybe he was somehow involved in this internal leak from the DNC emails here. All right, we're going to grab a quick phone call here. Bob in Indiana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Well, I want to tell you about how efficient the government is. I called Social Security to ask them about poverty thresholds. They want to hold me on the line for 45 minutes before they answer the phone. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds about right for government work here, but you didn't need to call Social Security because it is available on the web, and a couple of listeners did send me links to what the poverty level is, and it's set at a national level. They don't break it out by states with two exceptions, and that's here in Hawaii and up in Alaska. So you can look at the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and you'll be able to see that, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're going to switch over to Steve in California. Steve, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, hey, Mike, I'm just doing a little research right now, and I just got wind of Trump bans transgender people from the military. Un-American, says opposition, and they're going to be running with this for the next couple of days. You can bet that.
Oh, they're going to use it as a distraction from what's going on with Hillary and Schultz.
I think what Trump needs to do on this situation here is simply, this is a good example of it, is simply point to our good friends Israel and their military, and that they don't have the problems with the homosexuality in the military and all those other problems that go along with that, and the transgender. They simply he needs to point the finger to say, by example, if you want a strong military, and you do want a strong military, you don't need to have problems inside the military and morale problems. And if you do these other things that we're doing right now with Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and promoting all this, you create problems with morale and troops, and that diverts them away, their attention away from what their job is truly to be, is defend this country. So he needs to point the finger and continue to point that finger to Israel. Says, Israel's doing it, we're going to do it. By example, it works for them, it's going to work for us. That's all you need to say.
Well, you're absolutely right here, and I was just on the Richie Allen show, and that subject came on up, and I said on an individual level, I'm in agreement with Richie Allen. If you can carry the rucksack and use the gun, fine, go into combat. But military units are not comprised of individuals. They're comprised of a unit that has to act cohesively, have each other's trust, and not have these tensions brought up. And I'm sure Trump is looking at all the turmoil that has been caused in these various retail outlets and schools that are trying transgender bathrooms, and the boys can use the girls' showers and back and forth, and recognizes instantly that kind of upset is going to impede the efficiency of any fighting force. And especially as we ramp up, unfortunately, the New World War, that has to become a factor. And winning the war has to take precedent over being politically correct. Now, that being said, there might be a solution, and that would be to have, all heterosexual male units, all heterosexual female units, all gay male units, all lesbian female units, and all trans units, so that each group of people are with others they feel comfortable with, and you don't get into those frictions. And you might see that as being a possible solution for everybody who's out there screaming, that, this woman who thinks she's a man has a right to fight with the Marines and all the rest of that. But again, you're right. The corporate media and the liberals are going to be fanning this up as a distraction. They are really in a panic. We're approaching that bird on the wire moment where one of the insiders is going to break and make their deal, and it may be Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and at that point, everybody's going to fly off and go running to the investigators and prosecutors trying to get their own deal. First ones to make the deal get a good deal, and the last ones to make a deal aren't going to get much of anything except maybe a couple of months off of their prison sentences. So, Steve, thanks and all.
No, Mike, I don't think that would make them happy. Have separate units, I don't think that would make them happy. You could offer that as a solution. It would be a good solution. I don't think that would be acceptable to them. I think they'd say, no, that means we're excluded. We need to be part of the general population of the military. And that's
again, you're listening to the troublemakers who are out there trying to stir this up as an issue, because most trans people, most gay people, they're like ordinary people like you and I. They just want to mind their own business and get along. What we're hearing are the screamings of that class of human beings whose entire sense of self-worth is to be offended by something. And this is just the latest one that they're being offended about. I don't think it would be that much of a problem. It's a good middle ground here, but you're absolutely right. The professional whiners and the professional I will find offense with everything group, they're going to push us to ridiculous extremes. I mean, remember that male Army unit that was required to wear high-heel shoes for a while? I mean, that was just absolutely stupid, especially when you realize high heels are very damaging to the feet. And a lot of older women, and that includes the lovely Lady Claire, are paying a price later in life for those really tall heels they wore as young babes. And so, I mean, it really is, we need to bring back common sense, because common sense has become very uncommon in our society. In fact, I think it's time to declare it an endangered species.
Right. Hey, quick question, Mike. On the Jared Kushner thing, meeting with behind closed doors, of course, we know this whole Russian collusion and the hacking, that's just total bovine excrement, your words, but it is. Will this thing ever go away?
It'll fade gradually. It'll be referred to over and over again, and unfortunately we've reached the stage where the corporate media is treating it as if it's an absolutely established truism, never to be questioned, holy, sacrosanct. It's the prime assumption. Like the Earth is at the center of the solar system, and all future history will be written around that until somebody finally points it out how absurd the whole thing really was. And of course, that's our job. Steve, we're going to let you go here. We got a bunch of callers waiting on the line here. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and we're going to go to Clint in Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
W. Waxman Schultz thing. On this W. Waxman Schultz thing, I was a little foggy-eyed this morning when I saw the Bill Still report, and his hypotheses. I don't know how much evidence he had for this. Like I said, I was a little foggy-eyed when I heard it. There was 2 break-ins to the DNC mail servers, and what he's hypothesizing, or what he had evidence, was Seth Rich was the first one. And then when the intel got together and all that, they had this guy break in, and that's when they put the Russian fingerprints on it. It's a botched up job, to try and frame Russia and, make the whole thing stink.
So you're saying Awan was told to go back into the email server after Seth Rich leaked the emails and try and plant information that was going to frame Russia. That would tie in with some other things that I've heard as well. But we do know from forensic analysis of the email data itself, it wasn't sent out over the Internet. It was literally copied to a flash drive by somebody with physical access to the computer itself. And right. it just completely undermines that whole Russian hacking story. And we know that the entire Russian hacking, Russian collusion, Russia stole the election was created 24 hours after Trump won the election by the Hillary Clinton campaign, who couldn't accept defeat, couldn't accept failure, were in a panic because Trump could not be relied on to keep the lid on all the CIA drug running and everything else that's been going on in this country. And apparently Hillary literally got it into her head that she was going to be able to kick Trump out of the White House and move on in, with the American people standing behind her. Forgetting, of course, that the real reason Donald Trump won was not Russian collusion, but because the majority of the American people simply cannot stand her.
Yeah. Another thing, this Brennan Clapper interview with the guy that cried when Hillary lost. Oh, yeah, Wolf Blitzer.
Yes.
The Mossad agent. They're openly saying that they're going to have a coup d'etat here in the United States. And I got news for them, fellows. It's not 1963 no more. That was a surprise. That came out of nowhere, to the general population. This is no surprise no more. They're going to see I think they're really scared for their prison time.
Yes, they are.
They're really scared in their agenda.
Everybody tied in with that Clinton, Bush, CIA narcocracy, they're in a panic because bit by bit the American people to the true nature of what this government is about and what it's been doing for the last 30, 40, 50 years. And they're seeing what the government continues to do. And the corporate media has lost control of the minds of most of Americans. They're still out there.
Well, they sure have.
Yeah, they have. And again, it's another parallel with the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. And one last thing, the transgender army is supposed to be an army to defend themselves, not be politically correct. And the commander-in-chief should not have to worry about being politically correct.
Yeah, well, war is seldom politically correct anyway, but I'm absolutely in agreement with you, and I don't mean to offend any transgender or LGBTQ, PFD, BBDO, whatever else is out there. But yeah, as we go on into these wars, I would like to avoid the wars. I'd like to stop them. But if we're going to go into a war, I'd like to be on the winning side. I'll be very open and honest and about that. I'd like to be on the winning side, and that means having a cohesive, functioning military, not just another bunch of dress-up dolls to please the politically correct people.
No, high heels are optional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you go, Mike.
I think high heels should be banned. I've seen what they do to women's feet here. All right, so getting on back to the news here. Apparently, Attorney General Sessions, who is still soft pedaling on this issue of going back and investigating Comey and Hillary, he's announcing investigations into all of these leaks coming on out. He's launching multiple investigations. Okay, apparently the Senate vote to repeal Obamacare and provide a 2-year window for a replacement has failed. It was voted down. So the mess continues on that one. Now, as you know, one of the things Donald Trump has done that I'm fully on board with is he's set up this commission about voting integrity. And I can imagine that Donald Trump is well motivated on this issue because he knows that he and we, the American people, had to overcome massive election fraud. And that if he does not take on this system and do something, they're just going to double up on 2020. They'll have twice as many illegal immigrant voters. They'll have twice as many dead people voting. They'll have twice as much rigging on the electronic machines. He's got to do something about this. And it's amazing how many states are out there trying to stall this thing. And the Democrats are literally panicking over this idea that we're going to be looking at the honesty of the vote system. And over in Washington, U.S. District Judge Colleen Kolar-Kotelly has ruled that the states do have to provide President Trump with the data that he needs to establish whether or not the election was honest. And the Democrats are in a panic, which is really kind of weird because the Democrats are really big about registries for people for health care, registering your guns, registering this and that. ID for everything except for elections. It's obvious they're hiding something. Now, apparently down in Florida County, they're starting to go through their voter rolls, and apparently they discovered literally thousands of voters whose listed age on the voter records is over 100. I wonder if something funny is going on down there. The system is designed to facilitate stealing elections and to cover it up afterwards, and we need to get rid of it. We need to go in and get rid of those electronic machines. We need to crowdsource the count and verification process. And again, I wrote this article. It's right up in that submenu, the gray box just below the banner, How to Have Honest Elections. In fact, it's the very first article listed. And you ought to just look at that because it can work. I've gotten emails from people in other countries saying that, yes, when they got rid of the electronic machines, they've adopted many of the things that are in that article. The one about crowdsourcing the count and verification seems to be the new wrinkle. But all the other ones about, the dye on the finger to prevent multiple voting. And again, there should be voter ID. You have to have an ID to drive a car. You have to have an ID to buy cigarettes. You have to have an ID to buy alcohol. What is discriminatory about requiring an ID to vote? It's not racist if you are legally allowed to be in this country and you are legally allowed to vote. You can have a driver's license or a state-issued ID card. This idea that somehow demanding an ID to vote is racist is absurd in the extreme. Now, apparently, despite rumors to the contrary that were circulating yesterday, Rex Tillerson is remaining as Secretary of State. And it may be that CNN heard a rumor and they overblew it about how frustrated Tillerson is that he doesn't have more autonomy from Trump. Well, he's not supposed to be autonomous. CNN may have fibbed to us yet again. We'll be right back after these words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently what we're seeing here is some newly declassified memos that are exposing the extent that Obama was spying on the American people. Complete violation of the Fourth Amendment, civil liberty protections, and this involved the NSA and the FBI. And apparently this information was declassified in response to a Freedom of Information Act litigation by the American Civil Liberties Union. So, yeah, Obama was engaged in Nixonian spying on his enemies, targeting them with the IRS. It really is, it is out of control. It really, really is out of control. Okay, getting on over to the media, the war between Trump and Bezos is escalating. And Bezos seems to be turning the Washington compost into little more than a lobbyist weapon for Amazon against the United States Congress. And it's becoming very obvious the control of these owners of the media are just directing everything. Now, years ago, the owners of the media were controlling the news, but they were trying to keep it out of sight of the public to maintain that illusion that the media was a fair and objective reporter of the facts of what were going on. Today, it's very, very different. Dan Gaynor, who's Vice President of Business and Culture at the Media Research Center, is out there saying that the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost have been turned into little more than vanity press for their billionaire owners. Just out there putting out whatever the owners want to put on out. And that, of course, is continuing to further erode public trust and confidence, readership in these institutions here. Even McCain is out there screaming about how bad things are going when he was making his speech on the floor of the Congress yesterday when they were dealing with Obamacare. He came on out and said, stop listening to the bombastic loudmouths on the radio and television and the internet. To the dark regions with them. And they don't want anything done for the public good. Our incapacity is their livelihood. And Mr. McCain, no, your corruption and your incompetence are our livelihood. And if you would all agree to stop being corrupt and incompetent, most of us would go find other things to do with our lives. I'd love to be able to just shut the radio show down and the website on a day when it's no longer needed. I would be a very, very happy man. But as long as it is needed, as long as you continue to be corrupt and incompetent and a warmonger, we're going to be here. And people are, in fact, listening to us. They're paying attention. That's why the deep state is so upset. All right, let's talk about the war zones now, because there is a lot that is going on over there. Apparently the government troops, Syrian government troops, are on verge of the full liberation of southeastern Raqqa. And they're continuing to win back more territories from ISIL as they push toward Deir ez-Zor. It does look like this thing is very, very close to being over, and we're starting to get a sense of panic coming from the U.S. war planners. Over in Kalamun, and Arsil, Daesh and al-Nusra, their options have dwindled down to just two: surrender or die. And apparently the Daesh terrorists are encircled in the Lebanon mountains and part of the Syrian highlands. They're fighting along that border here. Now, we reported following the death of al-Baghdadi, many of the terrorist factions, the U.S.-supported terrorist factions, were fighting amongst each other. Which was a real good use of all of your tax dollars to send guns to these guys so that they could turn on each other instead of Assad. But apparently they have started to reach agreements, and the Syrian Arab Army and the SDF are dividing spheres of influence in eastern Syria. Meanwhile, the Syrian government forces, backed up by Russia, have liberated the village of Baglia and nearby hills from the ISIS terrorists in the area. And apparently the army has outflanked Dabat Mili, Talia, Shirgiya, and deployed at a striking range from Rasim Hamada, where clashes are now ongoing. We'll be back with a phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, the new White House Director of Communications, Scaramucci, who fired one of the White House people yesterday for being a leaker, has come on out today saying on Fox News it is the Obama holdovers who are doing the leaking. Gee, imagine my shock on that one. And again, one of the biggest strategic mistakes Donald Trump made coming into the White House is he wanted to be magnanimous in victory and allow these people to stay on. Because in the world of business, if you're the new boss of a group of people, they're going to be loyal to you because you're signing their paycheck. And that's what Donald Trump thought was going to happen. But that's not how Washington, D.C. politics works. And it looks like Scaramucci is on the warpath against the leakers and the Obama holdovers, and I think that's a good thing. We're going to go back to the telephones here. George in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? George, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Okay, yeah, I don't know why we didn't have you there for a bit. We got to flog that hamster. That hamster is just not doing his job. And it's time to do. Maybe we need to replace the hamster. Anyway, George, what's on your mind?
Well, I just got alert over my phone that the clean repeal of Obamacare failed.
Yes.
Same senators that voted for repeal Obamacare when Obama was president voted for it, but all of a sudden Donald Trump becoming president, we can't repeal it. And it's like, and you know the thing is, I think the rhinos are going to own Obamacare now, not the Democrats, because they had a chance to pass it and they decided to sign with big insurance companies and not the people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Democrats are going to be campaigning next year on this idea that, hey, you know, Trump failed to repeal Obamacare and the Republican-controlled Congress couldn't do anything about it. It's plain obstructionism. And again, the health insurance companies themselves, I'm sure their lobbyists are all over Capitol Hill, handing out campaign donation checks and spending whatever money it takes to keep you a slave to the health insurance industrial complex.
Well, you know, the thing is, I know Paul Ryan was sitting there talking about passing this bill about sanctions against Russia, and I said, Mr. Speaker, I said, Russia has nothing to do with my high insurance rates, deductibles. Russia has nothing to do with my high taxes or the overregulation makes my electric bills high. I said, leave Russia alone. You got enough problems here. It ain't bothering us.
Well, they have to make Russia a big deal because if they can't keep us all afraid of Russia and China and North Korea and now the Philippines, then we're really going to start thinking about, is this a well-run nation? And, of course, the answer is going to be no, it isn't. We're being fleeced by a bunch of greedy, corrupt politicians and corporations. They're having the time of their lives at our expense. They don't want us thinking about that, though. They want us afraid of Russia so that we'll just go along with the crime, corruption, and the looting and plundering.
Well, you know, the thing is, I just think we just need a groundswell of people. The 5 Republican senators, including John McCain, who voted against it, and the senator out of Alaska, Maine, Nevada, and one other place, all voted with the Democrats to go no clean repeal on Obamacare, and also Paul Ryan and these rhinos. We need a groundswell to force these senators to resign. Get out of the way if you're not going to be a part of the solution.
Well, this gets back to that voter integrity project, because as long as the elections can be engineered from above, they're not afraid of us in Congress. They're not afraid of... The only way they'll be afraid of us if we return to a system where we actually have the ability to vote them out. And we did succeed in, overcoming election fraud to get Trump in there, and that's why they're in such a panic. That iron grip they had on the throats of the electoral process has slipped. It's not gone, and they're desperately clawing to get it back. But that's why that voter election commission, election integrity commission, is such an important thing, and we have to support it. Right now, they're not afraid of us. John McCain's not afraid of the Arizona voters. Nancy Pelosi isn't afraid of her voters. It doesn't matter what they actually vote, because the elections are all being engineered by the deep state.
Well, you know, one thing we probably do on the senatorial side is we need a handful of states to challenge the 17th Amendment, because the reason is that amendment was never actually ratified.
Ooh, another one. Yes, I'd heard that one.
And the thing is, D.B. Kidd talked about that extensively. I mean, states challenge the 17th Amendment. We got 100 empty suits in the Senate that legitimately shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and they're very expensive suits, and you all paid for them.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, get back to the news here. All right, getting on back to the war zones. Yet again, the Syrian army has stopped an arms cargo en route to support the terrorists, and the convoy was filled with U.S. and French manufactured weapons. So they're trying to keep this thing going as long as they can. The U.S. is looking for some kind of a reason to move in and garrison Syria. Israel's continuing to support the terrorists in the south of Syria as part of their plan to eventually own the Golan Heights. They're already selling off the oil and gas under that land, and it's not theirs, legally. It's not theirs. Over in Iraq, again, they're turning to Russia for military support, oil deals, and to rebuild their infrastructure. And that is a real poke in the eye to the U.S. government because, I mean, the whole point of the U.S. government bombing Iraq's old infrastructure into rubble is that U.S. companies would get to build the new infrastructure at a small fee, plus accruing interest. And it's another indication that Iraq, after 14 years of the U.S. messing around with their country, is pivoting toward Russia. And they're talking about military aid of large numbers of Russian-made T-90 tanks for Iraq, which is going to make it a lot more difficult for the U.S. to intervene there. Now, interesting little comment in Trump's meeting with the president of Lebanon. He made an odd comment that Lebanon was on the front line against Hezbollah. And a lot of people were scratching their heads and saying, does Trump really understand what's going on over there? Because, of course, Hezbollah is defending Lebanon against constant Israeli aggressions. And a lot of people said, well, it's just a goof. I don't think so, because apparently Nikki Haley up at the United Nations is urging the Security Council to declare Hezbollah a destructive terrorist force. And so Trump's comment about Hezbollah may not have been a simple goof, but the opening propaganda in kicking up a new Middle East war or extending the existing Syria war into Lebanon, the way Vietnam spilled over into Cambodia and Laos. Now, Hezbollah is saying that their war with the U.S.-backed terrorists along the border with Syria is nearing the end. It's going to be over very, very soon. And apparently the terrorists control less than 10 square kilometers of the area and arsenal. And Hezbollah is on the verge of a huge, huge victory, and that might be the reason for the sudden White House concern over Hezbollah, because they're speeding up the end of the war in Syria, and the U.S. wants it to continue, as demonstrated by the convoy full of U.S.-made weapons that Damascus caught going into the terrorist areas. Meanwhile, Trump is pledging support for Lebanon's anti-ISIS push. Yeah, they're going to extend the war into Lebanon. And Trump also pledged $140 million for Lebanon's refugee crisis, which I think is going to irk those of us who are involved with the hungry and homeless in this country. Because the U.S. government never seems to have enough of our tax dollars to take care of homeless Americans, but they can pour it all over other countries left and right to take care of their homeless people. And it's another indication. The government has no regard for us whatsoever. We're walking wallets. They're not afraid of us at the ballot box. They are a little bit more now following Trump's victory. We have to get back honest elections to get that government worried about what we, the American people, are thinking. Because right now, clearly, they are not. Germany is now freezing their arms shipments to Turkey over what's going on in Syria, the immigration. It's a confused mess here. And it's just another squabble within NATO. Meanwhile, Russia is bolstering their military potential in the south in response to the emerging threats, meaning the continued deployment of NATO forces. Hello? Somebody on the line?
Yes.
Who is this?
Michael?
Yes?
This is Alex from Florida.
Yes, Alex. What's on your mind?
Hey, I just wanted to let you know that the Republicans are for Obamacare because they've been bought off, and I know that you already touched on that, but that's what it is. They can act like they're against it, but they've been bought off. So Obamacare is not going to change if we're counting on our Congress to make the change. They're not going to make the change because it's for the big business to begin with. And
the Republicans have always been the party of big business. You know, the problem is that the Democrats used to be the party of the people. Now they're the party for the big business.
That's right. They're both the same. Both fractions of our government are basically fighting Trump to make sure he doesn't govern by what he campaigned on. And I just wanted to mention that if you think about it, Trump has killed ISIL, or pretty much killed ISIL, and Al-Qaeda in his first 6 months, and Obama couldn't do that in 7 years.
Well, Obama didn't want to do that. Obama and Hillary were secretly supplying ISIL in Syria with weapons smuggled from Libya to use as proxies to overthrow Assad, and it failed miserably. And a lot of people got killed in the process, and our country got driven closer to economic collapse because of it. It's an absolute, total failure. Now, if they get ISIS and ISIL out of Syria, if they clean up their mess, destroy the evidence of the subterfuge, the U.S. will declare victory. But if you look at that larger plan for the Mideast that Wesley Clark revealed, it's a major, major setback.
That is correct. So when I look at Obama, when I look at Trump's accomplishments, he's doing his best to kill the media, the CIA media, which that's what I think CNN stands for, is the CIA News Network. He's basically killed ISIL. He's basically killed Al-Qaeda. He has basically ended lobbyists being able to serve in his administration. If they're going to be lobbyists for 5 years or for life if it's a foreign lobbyist, and I think he's doing a good job. I mean, so far I think he's fighting the devil.
Yes, he is.
The devil has all kinds of weapons, and they're very, very corrupted. Very corrupted.
It is. The swamp is proving to be a lot bigger and deeper and smellier than Trump thought it was going to be, and he made it worse by hiring some of the alligators to be his staffers. But again, some of the stuff Trump has done, I agree with. The Vaccine Safety Commission, the Voting Integrity Commission, support for NASA as a potential civilian technology incubator. Those I agree with. I certainly disagree with all of these continued wars. But again, we know that he is being lied to. When he meets with his cabinet, we know the CIA lied to Donald Trump when they told him that there was no question Assad gassed those people at Idlib. And I wish Trump had sat back and said, you know, it doesn't make sense that he would do that. But the head of the CIA sat there and said, yes, this is what's really going on. So Trump is being controlled because all of the people he thinks he's supposed to be listening to and trusting are lying to him. And they're part of this grand plan around him to basically corral the president and use Donald Trump to push their own agendas rather than do their job, which is to support the president and accept his directives.
That is correct. But there's also a chance, and I think that it's a good chance, that Trump's actually not the aggressor in all these wars. I think just like the deep state basically controls the media, and I think they could also control fractions of our military.
Oh, they're all over the place here. I mean, the CIA's been in control of all the corporate media since the end of World War II through Operation Mockingbird. And then you have the Israeli influence. You have the FBI's in there as well. The FBI was all over Hollywood. Everybody's in there playing around, and all of these various institutions and agencies, they all have their own agendas, and that's really what's beginning to tear this country apart.
Yes. I forget the name of the gentleman on YouTube. He did a presentation on the overthrow of Crimea through Crimea, and basically what he's saying is that it was the Obama administration that paid civil groups like Black Lives Matter, not Black Lives Matter, but that type of group,
Yes.
to go in there and overthrow the democratically elected government.
Oh, yeah, we all know that. I mean, this is a repeating pattern by the United States, and they're doing it in Venezuela right now, and they're getting ready to do it in the Philippines.
And they're doing it here. They're trying their best to do it right here.
Yes, they are.
And it's very serious, and it's very evil. I mean, people don't want to hear that, but it is evil to do that, and to basically make us all one soup, and we're all of the same soup, and there's no changing it. We need independence. They're trying to steal our independence, and they've basically done a pretty good job of it over the last 8 years.
They really have. I mean, when they're giving tickets to kids for selling lemonade, you know you're living in a dictatorship. All right, Alex, we're going to let you go. We're going to switch over to Mike in Western Canada. Mike, what's on your mind?
Mike, good to talk to you again. This is Mike Phillip in Western Canada, host of American Hawk Radio. We've had you on our show a few times. I would like to bring to your attention a situation that has arisen. I have a friend named Kevin J. Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
His website is freedomreport.ca. On Monday, I was going to collaborate with him on some projects for the show and YouTube and whatnot. I called his house, and his wife was quite upset, didn't want to talk, and I just left a message. But he called me back the following morning. Turns out that he had been arrested in Mississauga, Ontario, under hate speech charges.
Oh, man.
Hate speech because he was speaking out against M103, the motion to condemn all speech against Islam or the Prophet, which they specifically cited out in the motion. Now, the motion is not a law.
Okay, Mike.
But it appears as though they're acting like it.
Mike, I have to put you on hold. I'm going to keep you through the commercial break. Don't hang up. I want to hear more about this. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Mike in Western Canada, and Mike is filling us in on how apparently there has been an arrest of one of his associates under the hate crime laws. So would you just sort of pick up the narrative pretty much where you left it off?
Yeah, absolutely. So he called me, and it happened. And this is actually, there's been two of these now, but I'll get into the second one after. So we planned, and we sat down, and we did a 1-hour YouTube interview, which I posted on my website. I can send it to you if you want to post it on yours.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, do you prefer email or text?
I prefer email.
You got it. So anyways, you can hear it all from him in the interview, but basically there was a lot of really weird anomalies that happened. Now, first of all, he had two detectives show up at his door. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, and he was wearing a pair of cutoffs and a junky T-shirt. He said that they were apologetic and wouldn't look him in the eye when they informed him of what he was being arrested with. He asked them if he could go inside and change his clothes, and they said yes.
Okay.
Now, if you've ever had any dealings with the police, that does not happen. Then, after he had put on some fresh clothes, they took him out to the car, they put him in the car, and they did not arrest him until he was in the car. And then they cuffed him, but they allowed him to have his hands cuffed in front. That never happens. Then they took him down to the station, and he was walking through the station, and people were saying, he could hear him, saying, "Isn't that the freedomreport.ca guy? What's he doing here?" And he actually had one of the members of the force come up and shake his hand and congratulate him for his good work. Then they asked him if he wanted a private cell or to be put in general pop. He chose general population. You got to know him. He's a bulldog.
Yes.
Anyways, then, well, while in general population, a Chinese and a Pakistani man recognized him and said they loved his work. Then, when he had to go before the Crown Prosecutor requested that he be unshackled. This does not happen. So he was processed really quickly. He was let out the same day, and he's put out countless hours of videos on the whole LGBT thing being pushed by the Canadian government about the Islamization of Ontario. But his big thing was because what got him into this whole thing was that they had announced that every Friday they were going to have Islamic prayers piped over loudspeakers in the Peel District School Board in Islamic. And he got really upset. So he started his YouTube channel, and he actually had a large segment. It's funny because most of the people that were backing him on this were non-white. And there was even a lot of Muslims that were saying, no, we can't have this.
All right.
So,
Mike, I hate to do this to you again. We got to take a break for a minute for our top of the hour station identification. Stay on the line. I want you to finish this story. This is so important. We're starting to see all of this stuff happen here. Obviously, they're trying to do a crackdown on anybody who challenges the official view of anything. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're talking with Mike and an arrest for hate crimes up in Canada, which is sounding a warning that all of these so-called democratic, humanitarian, human rights governments are, in fact, starting a crackdown on anybody who refuses to go along with the official agenda on anything. So you're talking about your associate, this host. He's got a YouTube channel, and he was arrested. He was treated very kindly and gently by the arresting people and the Crown prosecutor. And again, what was the specific crime he was charged under?
So I can't remember the name of the specific act, but it boils down to any kind of hate speech toward an identifiable group, which, as I pointed out, I mean, does that mean if I say that most of the painters I've ever met in my life are a bunch of drunken bums? I mean, this is really broad and really vague language. And so, and as I mentioned earlier, there's actually been a second arrest now. A member of the NDP party appeared on CBC News, and this is a gay man. And if you don't know about Canadian politics, the NDP party is basically extreme socialist. And this gay socialist appeared on state television to say that he had concerns about ISIS-style Wahhabist ideology infecting Canada and that we needed to do something about it. And he was arrested right after that interview under the same law. So they're turning on their own. So even these progressive types that think that this is a good thing, they're even dragging the net in on them now. And so, yeah, but what Kevin told me was that the Peel District Police, the prosecutor, they seemed like they felt terrible about it. And here's the other thing. Usually in Canada, if you get charged with something, they throw every charge in the book that they can at you. He was only charged with one thing, and he's actually spoken out quite a bit about the whole LGBTQ thing. I mean, if you're familiar with the situation in Canada, it's absolutely disgusting. We have 8-year-olds being dressed up as girls and paraded in front of catcalling gay men in clubs to promote the trans agenda, I guess. And Kevin was speaking out on that. So, I mean, they could have gone into the archives of his channel and really nailed him. He's been getting death threats from prominent business owners and government officials, and we're seeing this as an attempt by them to get him into jail where he can be murdered, basically, because they told him they were going to do it. And but the interesting thing is that the people in law enforcement and prosecution seem like they're on his side, and in fact, a lot of the information that he gets is provided to him by law enforcement. I'll give you a really good example of that. There was a story that he broke from Windsor, Ontario, where there was a car accident, and the police who attended had found that the men in the car had crashed their car while they were on their way to a Christian university to shoot the place up. They had guns in the trunk, and they flat out told the cops what they were going to do, and the police were ordered not to report this to any media, but they leaked it to Kevin J. Johnston, so he broke that story. In fact, if you'd like, Mike, I could get him on your show if you want to have him as a guest.
I would like to have that. And this is starting to feel to me, I mean, given this, first of all, the laws are overly broad. One person's hate speech is another person's general opinion. When you talk about any specific group, you can take two people together and say, there's the specific group. As I understand that law, yes, you could be in trouble for saying most of the house painters I've met are a bunch of drunks. I could get in trouble for saying most of Congress are a bunch of drunks, and the fact that it may be true is no defense. Right. But it sounds to me right now the globalists are feeling the pressure from the nationalists, and this pushback against trying to blur all the Muslims and Christians together is really starting to build, and it feels to me like this is what's motivating this. The globalists are saying we have to tamp down any more opposition to flooding the Christian nations with Muslims because we need that for the New World Order. When we get down to the section of the talking points about globalism, there does seem to be this effort to reassert. George Soros is not done mucking about with the world, unfortunately.
No, he's not. No, he's not. But I'll tell you what, I'm encouraged greatly about this situation because since Justin Trudeau got elected, and I'd like to make clear, Justin Trudeau is just a figurehead. He doesn't actually make any decisions. He doesn't really have a lot of power in the Canadian parliamentary system. But Canadians that supported him in the beginning are beginning to really turn against him. I know people specifically that when during the election they told me, well, we're going to vote for Trudeau because it'll be kooky and fun and he's got great hair and I like him, you know what I mean? And you ask him, what is his policy? I don't know, right? So, but now even those people are getting sickened by what they're seeing in this situation in Canada, and there's this uneasiness, and I think that that those types of socialists that have been infecting our country are really going to get a wake-up call. You're going to see somewhat of a Trump effect north of the 49th parallel, as we saw with Brexit. And so, whether you like Trump or not, it was definitely a spit in the eye of the globalists and Clintonistas and what have you. So, I mean, that is encouraging. But right now, we're being plunged into it. And I don't know whether to be mad at Justin Trudeau or thank him, because he single-handedly woken up more people than, people would kind of go to sleep when there's a conservative government thinking everything's okay. And, so he's single-handedly woken up more people to that agenda than I ever could. So I don't know whether to send him a thank you note or what.
No, I'd go with the thank you note, or you're going to get a knock on the door here. All right, well, Mike, I just got the YouTube video about Kevin Johnston being arrested. I just put it up at whatreallyhappened.com. And we're going to let you go here, but yeah, let's keep up this discussion and keep me informed about what's going on up there, because this is very alarming. We're seeing a lot of wet work down here. There was the attack on John McAfee the other day. And it's a time of concern for anybody who dares to speak truth to power. Power is apparently getting ready to fight back in a very ugly, underhanded way. And these days, my web server, it's under more constant hacker attack today than it was just before the election, when Hillary's people were trying to shut it down. So something is definitely changed out there. And I think those who wanted the globalist New World Order are realizing their plans are falling apart, and they're just going to try and crack down on anybody who's speaking out in opposition to their agenda, which, yes, I am one of those people.
Absolutely. So I will put Kevin in touch with you. You want me to just have him email you, or should I give him your phone number, or what?
Yeah, just go ahead and have him email me, and we'll get him booked onto the show.
You got it. Thanks for having me on, Mike, and keep up the great work. And we will be having Kevin on American Rock Radio on Saturday, 2 to 4 Central at AmericanRockRadio.com right after Roger Stone.
All right. Well, thank you for that information, and we're going to let you go here. We're going to do a quick shout-out.
Take care, Mike.
We're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates rejoining the network, and we're going to go to Dustin in New Jersey. Dustin, thank you for being so patient and waiting, but that was very important information to get on out about Kevin Johnston being arrested. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike. Yeah, another satisfied customer of the Marxist paradise there in Canada, huh?
Yeah. Boy, Canada sure changed since I was there.
Mike, I got to keep saying this because people are going to... It's a globalist, neoliberal, Marxist empire. They don't want... They want open borders. People don't realize they want free speech only for them.
Yes.
Globally.
Yeah, and you can have democracy.
You
can have democracy as long as you vote for the people we want you to vote for.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look, they follow in the same playbook because it's an oligarchy.
Yes.
It's a small group of people. Like Germany wants to crack down on free speech, of hate speech, anything that they deem hateful. That can mean anything.
Yeah, it can.
It's the same. It's the same playbook. It's so easy to figure out.
German beer sucks. That's hate speech. Lock them up.
Hey, Mike. Not the Canadian caller, but the caller before that. I voted for Trump, but I hate to tell him this, but the Russians are the ones who defeated ISIS. It wasn't Trump. Trump has his hands tied. The military-industrial complex is the ones running the show. Trump's a figurehead. He can get some stuff done, but if you just look at the attack on the Syrian army by the military-industrial complex / NATO, and also with, that ordering of the cruise missile strike, which I still think was most likely I would say it was just more for window dressing.
Well, it was an embarrassment. Most of the missiles missed their target. And that's a real-world demonstration people are going to be looking at when they're getting ready to make their weapons buys. Donald Trump is, because of all this swamp and Russia and everything going on, he's being forced to make some compromises. In fact, Politico is now saying that Donald Trump made the announcement about transgenders in the military in order to secure funding for his border wall. So he's out there trying to make the best deals that he can, but he is being forced to make compromises. As far as the cruise missile attack on Syria, we know he was lied into it by the head of the CIA.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Trump still needs to get rid of everybody in the CIA, Mike. Everybody, and the NSA, and shut that Utah place. I'm telling you, if he doesn't, it's going to take them forever to pick out the bad apples. Because there's a lot of them on the left and the right. There is no parties, people. There's no Republican and there's no Democrat. It's globalist.
Well,
John McCain, Lindsey Graham. You know the list.
Yeah, I know the list. I don't think Trump needs to fire the entire CIA or NSA or FBI, just everybody above the level of a department head. Because it's those people at the very, very top, the directors and assistant directors and all the... They're the ones who are the political monsters, if you will, and then they spend all their time gaming for more power. And again, they let that power go to their heads, and they start thinking that really they know what's best for the country rather than the voters and the Congress and the president. Like I've pointed out many times before, when J. Edgar Hoover was head of the FBI, he called his office the seat of the American government. He was running the show because he had the blackmail goods on on the top politicians, and he felt that was his job, that he knew what was best for the United States, and yet he himself was being blackmailed, which is why, while he was head of the FBI, Hoover refused to acknowledge there was such a thing as organized crime.
Yeah, Mike, we also all know how empires end.
Yes.
Slowly, then suddenly. And if you look at Debbie Wasserman Schultz, again, with the hard drives, it's a classic example of this oligarchy that is above the law. And people need to stop thinking, Trump's going to fix it. Trump's got his hands tied now with these sanctions. I don't think he can veto this, right?
I'm afraid not. The House has come up with a veto-proof majority to pass these sanctions. And again, it's just another attempt to provoke these other countries into doing something where the U.S. can get a war going and say, it was their fault, they attacked us. That's the only thing, the only reason why we're not already in a hot war all around the globe is because the U.S. government needs to make it look like it's the other country's fault. And all of these other countries know that's the game. And so they're sitting back and they're accepting the abuse and the punishment, just waiting for the U.S. to wear itself out. The one exception, of course, is North Korea, and Kim Jong-un is apparently too dumb to figure out what the game is coming from Washington, D.C., which is why they're back to talking about war with North Korea.
Hey, Mike, the best thing to happen to Russia was the sanctions because it forced them to diversify. And short-term pain is long-term gain, Mike. And, these new sanctions are going to just hurt the Europeans, which is going to hurt the U.S. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. It's ridiculous. Like, these people are so stupid and they're evil and they're just so screwed up now. I mean, Mike, I think we're getting close, man, to the end of this whole
I agree.
Here,
I agree. I am seeing so many parallels between what's going on in this country right now and what was happening in the Soviet Union in the months leading up to that collapse. It's on the, and that's another reason why they're desperate to get a global war going, because the government is believing that if they can get a major war going, that we, the American people, are going to forget all about the crime and the corruption and the violation of our civil rights and the looting and plundering of our wealth by the bankers, and we'll throw the flag a snappy salute and fling our babies onto the designated enemy's bayonets. And it did work back in 1907 and 1929, but it's a very different America today, because back in the start of World War I and World War II, the American people were very naive. They were innocent. They trusted what the government was saying. It's a different world today. The U.S. government has lost the trust and confidence of the American people. The corporate media cannot control what the American people are thinking anymore, which is why getting into a new hot war is going to be an absolute disaster and will only accelerate the collapse of the U.S. government.
Well, I hate to tell you, Mike, I know you. I think it's going to be really a lot worse than what the Soviet Union went through, just because we have a lot of people that are used to handouts, and they're very violent. Like, a lot of the leftists are violent, and I don't know how they're going to react to things like crumbling around them. They just won't be able to handle, like, if the power went off and they can't use their cell phones, for like a month, like, they just won't react kindly to other people, I believe. I think it's going to be a lot worse than the Soviet Union. They're brought up differently, Mike.
Yeah,
we're brought up. We're all screwed up here.
You're absolutely right. One area that is of concern to me is in the former Soviet Union, where products were made to last and be repairable, most people knew how to fix small problems with their cars and appliances and so forth. Our culture, where everything is made to be disposable, you're not allowed to get into the car, certainly not its computer. The American people, by and large, on average, don't have the necessary skills to keep their appliances and car running in the absence of that support structure that we're all encouraged to be dependent on. And in that regard, yes, things will be a little bit worse. But again, out of that hardship, we may go back to that wisdom of saying we demand products that are built to last. We demand products that are built so we can fix them ourselves when necessary. And people are going to give up art history majors and go back to, appliance repair as something to study.
Invest in guillotine stock.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and by the way, whoever checked out those blueprints for the guillotine, please check them back in. There's a long waiting list of people who want to copy those things off.
Well, you make sure it's going to have a titanium blade because it's got to last a long time. Thanks, Mike.
You got it here. Unfortunately, contrary to the movies, titanium does not actually make a good blade. Makes a great handle, but not a good blade. So anyway, let's go to Anthony in California. Thank you very much for waiting. What's on your mind?
Yes, hi, Mike. I wanted to talk to you about, this is a totally different topic. I'm reading something about hacking the human body. Scientists now are able to use computer code to change your DNA.
Well, I mean, that's something they've been trying to work toward for a long time. Unfortunately, the primary tool for editing DNA turns out it's causing mistranscriptions in other parts of the genome. They're trying to fix that one. But again,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I see this as an extraordinarily dangerous technology because we still do not know all that there is to know about how DNA interacts with our biochemistry. And some of the mistakes that have surfaced during early GMO have shown they don't really know all that's going on. And, of course, the most benign example would be the Roundup Ready corn. which they got the result in the corn that they wanted. It was immune to glyphosate. But at the same time, the stalks of the corn turned out to be much tougher than the natural variety, so the farmers had to buy Kevlar belted tires. Now, it's a minor point, but it demonstrates because DNA is so self-referential. That's how they get all that information into such a tiny molecule. When you alter one part of that DNA, inevitably other parts of the organism are going to be affected. And nobody knows how to predict that. Most of these GMO corporations aren't even looking for that.
Well, you know, Mike, I was just watching this news article on One America News Network.
Yes.
And they were talking about the same thing I was talking about. And they're able to look at the strands of a particular, plant or organism through a computer program and map out the
well, they've been able to map
of DNA.
They've been able to map out the genome for quite some time. There was even a human genome program, and they're mapping out the other genomes. But going on in and editing it is extraordinarily dangerous. It's the most dangerous technology we have. Anyway, Anthony, got to let you go. Got to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back with some news. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Let's get back to some news here. We're talking about the war zones here. And Russia has announced that they are bolstering their military potential in the south in response to emerging threats. And that is, of course, all of these NATO war games, the deployment of THAAD, all of these aggressive moves being made by the West to encircle and basically corral Russia. Russia knows the U.S. wants a war with them, and they're pre-positioning. They're responding to all of these drills. Now, of course, in the corporate media, it's more signs of Russian aggression. How dare they move their defensive forces near our invaders? That proves that they're evil and need to be invaded here. Meanwhile, Russia is threatening retaliation if the U.S. blocks diplomatic entry visas. This little argument over diplomats, numbers of diplomats, persona non grata in these two properties is continuing. Just going back and forth and back and forth. And again, I almost wish the giant alien mothership would hover over Washington, D.C., and just throw a big ice bucket challenge all over them and say, all right, kids, cut it out. I understand why our young people are so messed up today. They're being told that they have to grow up and learn to act like adults when they can clearly see the leadership of government and corporations behaving like small children. It's a classic case of a mixed message here. Now, as you know, the U.S. is sending purely defensive weapons to Ukraine. And yet we are hearing from articles like this one in Sputnik News, it is impossible to prevent these U.S. weapons being sent to Ukraine from expanding the conflict. Now, of course, the arguments over the eastern Ukraine and Crimea are going on, and already Ukraine is being carved up for sale. 900 state-owned enterprises are going to be privatized by the oligarchs. They're buying up all of these assets that are supposed to be the collective property of the Ukrainian people, and they're going to privatize them and rent them back to the people. Out of 3,444 state enterprises, 893 are subject to privatization this year and next year. That's 1/4 of the publicly owned assets of Ukraine are going to be sold into private hands. Maybe. Poroshenko seems to be in trouble because a Kiev court has ordered the security service to launch a probe against Poroshenko. They're accusing him of high treason, which strikes me as long overdue. Even his own people do not like it. Apparently, the plan to bring Finland into NATO has dropped, at least for the moment. Apparently, Finland is getting cool on the idea of NATO because they can see that NATO is heading toward a war, and Finland would rather sit this one out. I think most of those countries would. Meanwhile, over in Yemen, the Red Cross is expecting the deaths from cholera will double by the end of the year to over 600,000. And I have to tell you, I am not convinced this is a natural, organic, normal breakout. Remember Haiti following the earthquake? The UN workers brought cholera in with them. Killed off huge numbers of people, was covered up. But basically, the Arab world's richest country, Saudi Arabia, has gone to war against the Arab world's poorest country. They've imposed a starvation blockade. This is the world's largest humanitarian crisis, and it's basically being ignored by the corporate media. Because they're busy telling you that Trump and Russia are colluding. Now, over in Libya, a little bit of good news. Basically, Libya has been a disaster ever since the NATO war to remove... we got to take a break for commercials. I'll come back to this. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones here. Keith in Montana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, Mike, I want to thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Have you heard of Myron C. Fagan?
The name rings a bell, but beyond that, no.
If you think of the Benjamin Friedman era,
yeah,
1967, he has an audio thing on archive.org. I believe I sent you the link. It's a play-by-play. It's almost like listening to you as you do the All Wars or Bankers Wars, except it goes into really good detail about the Rothschilds all through Germany and the setting up of the satanic, I want to call it a form of communism that would, in its outreach program, turn the Muslims onto the Christians and then onto the Jews, because they'll be discarded once they get their satanic New World Order.
Well, yeah, I got to tell you right now, anytime somebody puts in a descriptor like satanic this and that, I tend to lose interest on that. I'd rather be dealing with the nuts and bolts of what's going on. There is no question that the owners of the world's private central banks want to consolidate their control. They're very unhappy about countries that do not allow private central banking. They're very unhappy with countries that are trying to break free of private central banking, like Bolivia just did. Again, private central banking, it's not about banking. It's not about what's best for the people or for the country. It is a tool for enslavement. And now they're going for global enslavement.
Well, yeah, that's the entire premise of his speech there, or talk. He goes on to talk about how they're going to use the UN to push this globalist agenda. They've got all their insiders in through this the communism, and that's why today, when I keep hearing this democracy, I laugh because it's the United States is communist. It's sold as socialism, but cloaked as a democracy. Democracies don't go around the world bombing people and stuff like that, or trying to impose their wills on other people. But that audio thing is like, 151 minutes and 24 seconds long. But historically, he reads off all the papers and everything like that of how they, just like you did in All Wars or Bankers Wars, how they started the financing. This chief character that came over here to get the banks going, how they did it. Really historical
well, if you could send me that link again, to me again, I'll certainly repost it. But yeah, unfortunately, as money aggregates into fewer and fewer hands, it becomes its own force. And that kind of wealth can even take on a life of its own, where those who are in charge of that much wealth and power may have a change of heart and decide they want to go in another direction. But because of the attraction of all that wealth, their subordinates may arrange for them to be removed and just take on over. And it's almost like it is the money itself that is in control of the world rather than the people who think they are in control of the money.
Right. And there was one other fact that I thought was interesting there. He highlights how the, what do you call it, those useless ones will be taken out. And he goes on through whether it was the amount of Jews that died under the Bolsheviks, but they don't care about death. It reminds me of Brzezinski saying that it was easier to control 1 million than kill 1 million, but today it was easier to kill 1 million than control them. But he goes on to say, and I thought this was really important, it's almost like it was being read today, because he was highlighting, he didn't use the word fake news, but that will be used as a premise to control all communications to where it's only issued from whichever organization they set up, kind of like George Orwell. You know?
Yes.
And I think that the fake news thing is going to be turned against the alternate media, even the regular media, until you've got these globalists that control all the media, and that's going to be inherently what you're going to hear. And I mean, it's no matter where you go, it's at gas pumps, drive-ins, everything. You got the little little screens that pop up when you pull a pump on the gas pump. You're being fed news, no matter whether you walk into a pub or anything like that. It's going to be a state-mandated TV type stuff.
Yeah, just like George Orwell. I mean, we ran a story a couple of weeks ago. CNN apparently actually pays the airports to have those screens at the airline gates where people are just sitting and they're being bombarded with the propaganda. Same thing at I don't know if the post office is being paid or not, but you go to the post office, there's always a TV screen with CNN on there. Our bank has a TV in the waiting line area. Used to be CNN, but I guess even the bank tellers got fed up with that, and now they're running the cooking channel. But yeah, it's just trying to just saturate us completely so we come to accept what they're saying is true. It's not working. Trust in the media is definitely on a decline right now, and they're not sure what to do about it because they can't start telling the truth without undoing all of the agenda. All they can do is continue to come up with more and more spectacular lies, and the more outrageous the lies become, the more obvious it becomes that it is a lie, like Assad gassing his own people at Idlib.
Well, that's like they're down in Duterte down in the Philippines. They're now saying that he's killing his own. It's the same premise as Syria. But let's go here. But I wanted to say one other thing. I think if you took the word satanic off of there and you just use the premise of moralists, that they are so moralist, they don't care how many they kill, the methodology of the way they do it. I mean, he goes through about how it's going to ignite the Middle East, turn Russia, everyone against each other. And, of course, when the smoke clears, they'll have their utopia. I mean, that's what they think. And I think, as you were talking about earlier, they see that this is unraveling on them right now, and they're going to do everything to kind of pull it back together.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. They're hitting the panic button. Excuse me, I'm having a coughing fit here. And, excuse me.
That's right. I'll let you go here, but give me that moisture, send it our way, because we're burning up over here in Montana, okay?
All right, we'll try and do that. We'll take one of these hurricanes that's heading toward us and shove it up your way. And yeah,
because it's so smoky in the valley here right now, you wouldn't believe.
All right, well, we'll send a hurricane up there. All right, well,
all right,
Keith,
my best, you and Claire.
All right, Keith, we're going to let you go here. And yeah, believe it or not, one of the hurricanes, one of the really big, powerful ones, 120-mile-an-hour winds at the core, and aimed at us is, I'm not kidding you, called Hurricane Hillary. So she's out for revenge, I would guess, here. Okay, getting on back to the news. We were talking before the commercial break about Libya and how basically it fell apart following the intervention to get rid of Muammar Gaddafi. And Keith raises a good point. How can we call ourselves a democracy when we've been going all around the world overthrowing democratically elected rulers and imposing these juntas, these puppet rulers? Obviously, the two statements don't line up. Well, apparently, French President Macron has managed to start a process that might tone things down in Libya. He's gotten the two most influential leaders in Libya to have a meeting. He's hosted them to try and bring Libya back together, to reconcile between the Libyan people's desire for a true democracy and the officially internationally recognized puppet regime being imposed from without. But what's really interesting about this story is they're openly acknowledging that there was a NATO invasion that killed Muammar Gaddafi. Now, if you'll remember, back when all of that was going down, what did the American corporate media tell you? Oh, it's a revolution. The Libyan people are standing up against the evil dictator Muammar Gaddafi, that terrorist. They're finally going to kick him out. And now they're saying, yeah, it came in from outside. It was largely authored and agitated for by Hillary Clinton. Remember that video where she said, we came, we saw, he died, and then she cackles like the Wicked Witch of the West. That's where that came from. And now they're acknowledging, yeah, this was another U.S. Overthrow. Now, for some reason, Donald Trump is amping up the rhetoric on Iran, saying that Iran will face big problems if it does not adhere to the nuclear deal. And he's basically out there with this warning, just a week after the White House certified to Congress that Iran is complying with the agreement. It signed with the P5+1 group. Just after the IAEA verified yet again that Iran is in full compliance with the terms of the P5+1 deal. It is the United States that has not fulfilled all of their obligations to Iran by unfreezing Iranian assets and lifting sanctions. So why all the tough talk now? Well, Iran may realize they are still in the U.S. crosshairs. Remember when Wesley Clark leaked out that grand plan for the conquest of the Middle East? The last name on the list was Iran, which was supposed to be invaded and overthrown and conquered in 2008. They're a little off the timeline, obviously. And so basically, Rouhani is now out there saying that Iran is going to work on strengthening their defensive weapons in response to the new U.S. sanctions. Because right after the White House certified Iran was obeying the P5+1 deal, they threw more sanctions on there. And all the sanctions are going to do are drive Iran closer to Russia and China. So Iran is out there saying we're going to strengthen their defensive weapons, and I think they're using that word specifically so that the Western media can't say Iran is preparing to invade and attack war. Remember that ludicrous story that came on down about how Iran is going to get nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles from North Korea, and they will launch all across the Middle East. No, Iran's not going to do that. First of all, it's not in their nature. Iran has not initiated a war of conquest against another nation in 200 years. And certainly has not done so since the Iranian Revolution of 1979 that kicked out their U.S. puppet ruler, the Shah. It's not in their nature. They want to be left alone. They just want to live their lives, do their business, and that's it. That's all they really want. That's all most everybody on the planet wants. So it's just a few psychotics in positions of power that want to play the grand game of empire. And again, a reminder. Nations that have nuclear weapons are not going to haul off and use them without any reason. Nuclear weapons are weapons of deterrence to send a message to other countries. The cost of invading us will exceed any potential gain. That's what nuclear weapons are for, deterrence. The only time a nuclear weapon has been used to attack another country is by the United States against Japan. Even if Saddam had had nuclear weapons, he was never a threat to the countries around him. Same thing applies to Iran, same thing applies to North Korea. Meanwhile, with regards to North Korea, it's starting to look like South Korea's new president does not have full control over his own military because apparently Seoul is going to mount a 1-ton warhead on their 500-mile range ballistic missile. And it's an increase from the 1,100-pound warhead. It's also probably going to adversely impact the range, but apparently this is being done with the blessing of Washington, D.C. It's another provocation. Now, once again, Vladimir Putin is coming on in and proving to the world he is a statesman because apparently and Russia are developing economic ties with North Korea. They share a narrow land border, and they're trading with each other. And Putin is saying that their North Korean ties and economic partnership are an important aspect. And they're unconcerned with this idea that North Korea is a threat to the region. And Putin is sending a signal. If there is a U.S. invasion of North Korea, at the very least, Russia will be neutral. They will not allow the U.S. to invade North Korea from the Russian shared border. At worst, it means Russia will militarily support North Korea with more weapons, material, whatever. Going to stalemate the U.S. again, like Russia has done in Syria and so many other places. Now, apparently over at the CIA, Michael Collins is saying we shouldn't be worried about Russia. China is the greater threat. Ooh, bad China. Now, China really isn't a threat to you or to me. Russia isn't a threat to you or to me. Neither is Iran. It is the U.S. government stealing other nations' wealth to try and clean up the economic mess they themselves created. That's the threat. The threat is purely this argument over ink and paper. Because as the U.S. economy continues to implode, people are turning away from the U.S. dollar. Because it's not backed by anything but the future slave labor of the American people, and there aren't enough Americans to make good on all those treasury bonds. And if the treasury bonds collapse and they're in a bubble, then the Federal Reserve note becomes worthless. China and Russia are acquiring gold to back the ruble and the yuan with, and they are far more attractive as currencies, and countries are turning to them. That's the only real threat. Russia and China are a threat to the Federal Reserve. Well, if the Federal Reserve is concerned about it, let those fat old bankers go on over there and have a war with Russia and China. But the fat old bankers didn't get to be fat old bankers by going on out and fighting their own wars. They want your kids to go on over there and destroy the ruble and yuan so that they can go on bleeding the American people dry with their private central banks. All right, we're going to take a couple more phone calls. Terry in Oregon, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, more than one person has said Iran is the biggest exporter of terrorism. The only thing I know about that is that they send some money to Hezbollah. Hezbollah is protecting South Lebanon against the invaders from their south, and they were fighting ISIS in Syria. Is there anything else that Hezbollah is doing that's terrorist?
Israel calls Hezbollah a terrorist group. Nikki Haley is now up there at the UN trying to get the Security Council to declare them a terrorist group. But it's just a label. I mean, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's just an arbitrary label that's put on out there to demonize a group. And there is no evidence that Iran is tinkering with other countries anywhere near to the extent you see coming from Israel in the United States. And when you look at the fact that Obama and Hillary Clinton were, in fact, arming ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria, then obviously the United States is a state sponsor of terror far more than Iran ever could be. Thank you for the call, Terry. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take another phone call. James in Japan. Aloha. Ohayou gozaimasu. What's on your mind?
Ohayou gozaimasu. Genki desu ka, Michael?
Genki desu. Anata wa?
Watashi genki. Thank you. Michael, you got to stop going on about this whole Assad stuff, about the chemical weapons, because actually Assad and his son, they visited Aleppo after all the damage that was committed, and they went to a falafel stand, and his son did pass some gas.
Oh, my goodness. I stand corrected.
All right.
I stand corrected. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm upset with the whole, I'm really upset with the whole Russia thing. I'm not living in America, as you know.
Yes.
But to me, it seems like it's just, they're trying to push this whole Democratic, the Democrat crimes away and put it towards Trump, you know, like for all the bad things that they did. And it really disgusts me, you know, just it's getting so disgusting. And then when you get people coming up and they're like Clapper and, we should have a coup and all this stuff, and it's really making me kind of crazy. What do you think about that?
Well, it's almost like two people get into a fist fight in the alley, and they both realize that they're in a position where neither one can stop fighting. There's no way to say, all right, let's call this off. It's really being stupid. And so they're both feeling cornered, and so all they can do is keep on slugging. And I could almost picture 20, 30 years down the road in a very different America, and we're still going to have all these really old Hillary supporters lurching at us out of alleys and muttering about spare change, and then going on and on about how Trump was, working with Russia to steal the election from Hillary.
I really appreciate that Trump is trying to push the AG to finally try and prosecute Hillary. That was what he promised during his campaign trail.
Yeah, I think that idea about possibly firing Sessions was Trump's warning shot across the bow, saying, there are some real crimes out there, confirmed by the FBI, Title 18 violations. Why are you not doing something about that? And so I would not be at all surprised to see Sessions replaced in the near future. I just don't want to see Rudy Giuliani be the new AG. Trump needs an attorney general who's outside the narcocracy, who's really going to come on in and start doing some serious prosecutions. And it could get ugly. If you look at the history of Sicily's fight against organized crime, and how many mayors and police chiefs were just being gunned down in the streets when they were trying to deal with that. We could see it come to that here in this country to get rid of this narcocracy. But we're already seeing people getting killed left and right. Okay, anyway, got to let you go. Got to take a break for station identification. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha America, welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We've got some callers waiting on the line. Before I take the phone calls, though, I want to get another important story in on here, having to do with this border dispute between China and India. And it almost seems a little schizophrenic because at the same time, apparently one of the issues there is that India is very concerned about this China's Belt and Road Initiative, and they've been trying to sort of get in the way of that. And that would be a strong motive for somebody to try and kick off a war with China to derail that, because this Belt and Road Initiative is a serious threat to Western-owned shipping and rail companies, because it's just going to cut straight through from China along the old Silk Road right into Europe, and it's going to deliver cargo faster and cheaper, and that is a major threat to some of these corporations who make a lot of money shipping things around the various canals and other rail companies that profit from that. And that may be the reason for this dust-up over what is a relatively useless piece of soil. All right, we're going to go back to the phones now. Don in Iowa, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Hello. I want to talk about Trump as far as when he first got elected. He could have. There were actually rumors that he would go and fly to Russia and talk to Putin even before he was inaugurated, and he could have done that. He ran on one of the things he ran on is we should try to be friendly with Russia, wasn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely was, and it's one of the reasons the American people were voting for him. We're sick and tired of all these wars. We understand all this Russia and China bashing is just a lot of nonsense to gin up a war for the war profiteers.
He should have nipped it in the bud. He should have stuck with that, because nobody ever decreed that Russia is the enemy. This is just something that's been made up out of nothing, that Russia has to be the enemy. It makes no sense at all. It never did make any sense.
It wasn't that many years ago when Russia was actually seriously considering joining NATO. We were all buddy-buddy. Russia was doing business all across Europe. Russia was doing business with the United States of America. And then all of a sudden, Putin takes direct government control of Russia's central bank and is immediately shoved to the top of the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list.
Right. Well, if he would have stuck with that and just immediately, in other words, he should have took the initiative. Instead, he lets the other side control the narrative.
Yes.
and then he's on the defensive all the time.
You are absolutely right, and it's one of my big arguments against him. He's got to stop playing rope-a-dope. He's got to get on out there and gain the initiative. He's got to go on the offensive, and I think he needs to basically demonstrate a little more strength. If his attorney general is not carrying out the investigation of Hillary Clinton that the American people in part voted Trump to do, then Sessions does need to go. We need to get rid of all of these officials who are clearly working against the president. Trump needs people around him who are going to do the job Trump promised to do. Trump needs to start going outside the Beltway to get these positions filled. Now, of course, he's got to go through congressional approval on all of these, and that's what hamstrings him. Trump is surrounded by people who are basically confirmed by the Congress, which is openly at odds with Donald Trump.
Could he just appoint a special counsel himself?
I'm not sure if the president can appoint a special counsel or how much authority that they would have. But basically, I think the best course is that finally somebody is going to turn state's evidence. There's going to be a break in the case, a piece of evidence, something exposed so clearly and obviously to the American people that they're not going to sit still for the government saying, oh, it's really no big deal, and, the media saying it's no big deal. It's going to have to be something really obvious. Oh, it was a suicide. This guy just got depressed and he stabbed himself in the back 27 times. It's a suicide. I mean, something that obviously over the top, where the American people are going to...
It's pretty obvious when they found this guy I guess he was trying to escape, leave the country, and you don't know, he might have just been taking a vacation to the near someplace or something.
Well, no,
they say he was...
Well, he was being charged with bank fraud. And I think the reason he was fleeing the country is because he's in possession of inside information about what was going on inside the Democratic Party.
Yeah, they can't bury this. They can't bury Seth Rich. I mean, so far Seth Rich is buried. Nobody can even investigate. If they go to Washington D.C. police, they just say they don't say anything.
No, it's all no comment now. It's all no comment, no comment, no comment. And now apparently this investigator is saying that there was some kind of a connection between this Awan and Seth Rich. And Awan may have been involved in the leaking of the DNC emails, and Awan may have, realized anybody who's got incriminating information on the Clintons is not going to be able to buy an affordable life insurance policy. And so maybe he decided it was time for him to head for parts unknown.
Well, we hope something good happens, but Trump, that's the reason he got elected, is because basically everybody figured, well, at least he's not a politician. That's what the reason, when it comes right down to it, that's why everybody voted for him.
Yeah, but that was also his weakness, because he's very politically naive. He came into the White House.
We all thought he was smarter. We thought he was smart enough to figure it all out. And go ahead and do
you can be smart, but you can be inexperienced, and that's really the issue. Trump is very smart. And he's a good businessman, but he came into the White House as dangerously naive about Washington, D.C. political realities as Jimmy Carter did. And look how he got blindsided.
I think he was smart enough he could have figured it out. Well,
I think he is figuring it out. He's starting to figure it out. And now he's trying to figure out what he can do about it. But again, he's like John F. Kennedy. He's surrounded on all sides by his enemies. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining the network. And we're going to switch over to Mark in Georgia. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there?
Hello.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Hi. I've listened to Dr. David Duke repeatedly, and I had never heard him say one single racist word. I've heard him speak very eloquently about the racism of Zionism and Jewish supremacism among those people who hold to that mindset, not to make a blanket indictment of Jews. But I thought one thing that was really close to people's minds is Dr. Cynthia McKinney and Dr. David Duke have a common cause there. And I just thought how it would blow people's minds if those two were to team up about this issue and get the word out that basically the phony Jews are the real problem.
Well, they are getting the word out individually. I've had both of those people on this show, and maybe they could team up. The big problem here is that anybody who's trying to change the system peacefully from within is basically going to be ignored, marginalized, or smeared by the corporate media. And if they become too much of a problem, they're going to be arrested like Kevin Johnston just was, or they're going to be eliminated like that editorial writer over at the Wall Street Journal who had uncovered yet another Hillary Clinton pay-for-play scheme, where as Secretary of State, she helped this American company bypass the sanctions on Russia so that they could buy this Russian company. And there was a huge donation made to the Clinton Foundation. And this guy had had all the information, and he was going to publish the story, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, he committed suicide.
Yeah, shot himself in the back of the head 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, it's just I guess the best thing I can do is try to contact both of them and suggest, look, I'm pretty sure you people have your differences. I used to be among Cynthia McKinney's constituents, just like I used to be a constituent of Newt Gingrich, and you can guess which one I respect more.
Yes.
But the thing is that people who think, well, that she's a liberal, and therefore it's like, yeah, she used to be as polarized as you are. But she came to a realization when this allegation that she hit a cop with a cell phone, and then she found that the people she thought were her friends turned against her.
Yes.
And so the thing is, there's sometimes there's a rude awakening, because the thing that they always leave out, the enemy of my enemy is only my friend for as long as it's mutually convenient. When it stops being mutually convenient, they stop being our friends.
Yeah, it is amazing that a government that demands the loyalty of the people has very little of it within its own structure.
Right, and that's the thing, is that they're violating our privacy, and then they're claiming that for national security, or as I call it, national security, they maintain that they can't tell us, they can't address things that show, well, here's your narrative, and we find out things that show what you told us ain't the truth, and then they act like not just ignorant, but willfully ignorant, and that's what I have a real problem with. That's where I need to prepare a letter to Representative Loudermilk, who is the freshman congressman who thinks that more of the same is going to result in something different, because I think you understand the word conservative means let's maintain the status quo, and the proper understanding of the word liberal, let's do something different. So when I agree with
okay, that's not actually what the words originally meant. Conservative meant being conservative with government power, meaning limited. Leave people alone. That government which governs least governs best. Liberals are the opposite. Government can and should control absolutely everything in order to secure the best mental state for the people being governed. And again, that goes all the way back to that whole Margaret Mead nonsense coming of age in Samoa, which was a hoax, which is why the liberals keep making such horrific mistakes time and time again, because they won't go back and challenge that prime assumption. Just like today, we're not supposed to go back and challenge that prime assumption that Trump and Russia colluded to steal the election from Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, when I refer to the word liberal, I mean the founders called themselves liberals because they fought for the liberty to do something different, not how that word has come since then. And so that's what Dr. Charlie Weeks told us when I was in college, is that's the difference between these two terms. But like I say, there's words and how the words are applied, and I have been known to get into semantics about semantics, but all, in the good way of challenging people to think about what do these words properly understood actually mean versus how are these words used. Like, some people would get really upset if I told them that the Bible is propaganda. And so, how dare you? And it's like, well, I mean that it's information intended to persuade. And it's like, well, why do you say so? I just did. That's what the word propaganda means, but you thought I meant it was deceitful. And it's like, what's deceitful is people go into this with a mindset of, I'm going to show that guy wrong, rather than, God, you show me where I'm wrong. Because if I'm wrong, I want to know about it now. Well, I don't want to go spreading my error.
The problem is that propaganda generally is used for nefarious, negative, and deceitful purposes. Anyway, going to let you go. We got a lot of callers on the line. We're starting to run out of time. Going to switch over to James in Ohio. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. The first thing is Linda Sarsour, how she's promoted as a spokeswoman for the Palestinian people. Despite what the American government has helped Israel do to the Palestinians, I really don't think that they bear us conservative Americans animosity the way that Linda Sarsour says they do, and I think she's probably on the Soros payroll, and I really think a lot less of some independent media personalities who promote this propaganda tool. The second thing is, I think we might be seeing some cracks in the unified front of our overlords. Three particular examples come to mind. Alan Dershowitz coming out and saying that, defending Trump on the potential firing of Mueller and the firing of Comey and all that. That's kind of odd. You would think he would be all for getting Trump out of office, or maybe he's hoping for a presidential pardon. The second one is Bill Gates saying that unlimited immigration into Europe has to stop. That's really kind of unusual, too, for
let me tell you what I think is going on with Bill Gates. I think Bill Gates and probably a lot of the other globalists are realizing that the backlash from the Muslim tsunami into Europe is threatening to break the European Union apart, and that European Union was a major stepping stone to the globalist New World Order. And I think Bill Gates is not concerned with what's actually going on in Europe so much as he is with preserving the European Union, because it is in serious danger right now from all the problems being caused by the open borders. So I think Bill Gates is basically saying, let's not inflate that balloon anymore because it's about to pop and we don't want it to pop.
Well, I didn't mean to imply that he was in any way good, but the third example is Benjamin Netanyahu saying that George Soros is a problem. But anyway, all this indicates to me that things are not going so swimmingly with our overlords, and we may see some more sincere rank breaking in the future. So that's about all I have for you.
All right. Well, I think what we're going to see before the rank breaking is a lot more strange suicides and bizarre deaths, because the other side is terrified, and they don't seem concerned at all with the fact that the sheer volume of these strange deaths is calling attention to itself. All right, James, we're going to let you go. Boy, we got a lot of callers today, making up for yesterday. Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Okay, did we lose Tom? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, good day. Yeah, good day, Michael. How you doing? Yeah, Michael, I want to talk about with Debbie Wasserman Schultz has one of her cronies trying to sneak out of the country, but they don't say which country he's trying to sneak to. I was wondering if it's going to Israel. And that's been all over the news on Drudge and all that about Debbie Blattermouth Schultz's compadre trying to sneak out of the country. I don't know what kind of information he has or whatever for the DNC, but also, Michael, I want to ask you, about this healthcare stuff. They're never talking about there's this healthcare bill that they're trying to repeal. It's going to involve illegal immigrants. And you know what, Michael? I had two stories today. Is there 11 million? Is there 14 million illegals? They don't even know. So how? Even in Trump's administration, still they don't know how many numbers of illegals are in the country.
No, they really don't.
Let alone the gang members,
and let alone how many voted in.
Exactly. And if that's the case, Michael, we don't know what did. And then you're talking about Europe. The gentleman on you has this hat on there. We're talking about Bill Gates. I think everything you said, Michael, is absolutely right on the money. It's a bullseye. Bill Gates is only worried about the European Union breaking up because he's looking at when these Arabs take over all of Europe and they have their Sharia. They don't need Bill Gates' computers or all his Apple or whatever crap he has or Microsoft. They don't need none of that. They don't believe a lot of that stuff. 90% of them, I guess, but. Going here and there. And another thing I want to bring out, you had another caller earlier talking about David Dukes. I don't know if you noticed, Michael, but in 1996, I believe, it was in a Playboy interview. Did you ever see that Playboy interview, the interview they did with David Dukes?
No, I didn't.
Well, they had an interview with Dukes, I believe it was in 96, and he was a Mensa. You know about Mensa, correct?
Yeah, I used to belong.
Okay, well, yeah, exactly. They're afraid of guys like you and Dukes because Mensa, you guys are superior in IQs. And I remember that interview, I read that Playboy issue, and they're talking about how Dukes was so intelligent, and everybody else in the clan are a bunch of rednecks, dummies that don't have an IQ of a 75. And this guy comes along, and I never forgot that interview. I was reading it, and the one guy says they were afraid that if they had 20 or 30 of guys like Dukes in that kind of movement, that it was frightening. I'm like, I'll never forget that. But I'm saying to myself, but wait a minute, look at all these universities with all these schmucks that go to these universities. All these guys are Mensa?
Well,
universities?
Not everybody at a university is a member of Mensa. I think basically by default, only 2% of the population qualifies for Mensa. Of those people, correct, not all of them join Mensa. Believe it or not, Mensa was actually started as a U.S. government program to identify and be able to track people with high IQs in order to make use of them for government projects. And then the whole thing kind of fell apart when they found out that people with high IQs are not necessarily educated. They're not necessarily driven. They're very difficult to control in many cases. And so Mensa is more of a social club. And I'll tell you, some of the wildest parties I ever went to were at those Mensa conventions. But even I quit after a while because I got tired of all the people who thought having a high IQ all by itself meant the world owed them something. And so I kind of faded away.
Michael, one more thing.
Gotta let you go. Gotta let you go. Commercial break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take 2 more phone calls, and then we're going to get back to the news because I've got a lot of things to cover before the end of the program today. And let me just get off my own wire here. All right, so we're going to go to Rick in Arizona. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hey, if Sessions gets fired, it's plain to me that he was tricked out of his Senate seat. Number 2, this guy that was the head of the lead singer of Linkin Park, what is it with all these guys that got it made hanging themselves? I mean, they got, either way, they got money, they got women. If they don't like women, they got men. They don't got to work. They're traveling.
Was he on prescription? Was he on prescription antidepressants?
No, he wasn't. You know, no. He said Trump was worse than terrorism. Number 3, Donald Trump is a front man for the international mafia that doesn't allow Jews in their country. So Trump is allowed to build hotels in countries that Jews can't be in business. That's the front that he puts on. And when they speak of the Russians, that's who they're talking about, the international Jewish mafia, which carries Israeli passports. So I think there's something to the Russian talk, but everybody, they're just too scared to really
that seems like
nobody's going to move again.
Seems like a bit of a reach here, and I appreciate your input. Really? I think it needs a little more substantiation. So thank you for the phone call. We're going to go to Robert in Pennsylvania. Robert, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
This is a little bit off topic. Hi, Michael. It's nice to talk to you again. I've been trying to donate here, but I'm having a rough time with my
I understand fully.
Okay, look, I'm taking my son for a physical, and I remember you talking about the list of vaccinations inside the box, and I asked them, I said, well, you know, there's a list of vaccinations. If you're going to give the vaccination, there's a list inside the box. I said, I wonder if I could get that list. And the lady, she went offline, and she came back, and she said, the list is not even on the box. I said, no, it's supposed to be in the box. If it's in the box, I'd like to get my hands on the ingredients. And, you know, they're throwing me a wild card. Is it in there? I mean, is it supposed to be in there?
There's supposed to be a package insert inside with the vaccine. It's on very thin paper and very tiny type. It doesn't have the ingredients, but it does have a list of contraindications that are required by the FDA. And everybody has a right to look at those. And if you can't get it from the package insert, because somebody threw it away. Over at the FDA's own website, you can go there, and there is a search engine. You can put in the specific medication or vaccine, and you will get the official FDA warnings about it. And we know the FDA is compromised, but there are still some people in there who are, you know, having to put the truth out there. And they'll put out this idea that, you know, vaccines will come with these warnings, can lead to autism and neurological damage. Unfortunately, if you're in one of those states where the vaccines are now mandatory, you don't have any more choice. The doctors can pump your kids full of this stuff. without your permission. It can permanently damage your child, and if it does, you can't sue the vaccine makers.
Where do I find out if it's mandatory in PA?
You'd have to basically go to probably your state Department of Health and just do a web search. I don't know what the laws are in specific states. I know that most states are following the CDC guidelines, but some states have now made them mandatory by passing laws saying if you don't have all these vaccines, your child can't go to school. Personally, I would rather homeschool my child than have these chemical assaults done on them. I mean, if
one more year, and that's the last shot, and then I'm thinking he's going to go off the end for it. I don't like that.
Well, if he's already had most of his shots and has not had an adverse reaction, because not everybody gets the adverse reaction. What we're dealing with is a pharmaceutical industry that has a one-size-fits-all approach to formulating these chemicals. But we're all different based on, our DNA. I mean, the fact that we have different blood types that are incompatible should tell you that we're not all the same human being that they can pump identical chemicals into. And in the future, hopefully with a more mature approach to this, medications will be tailored to the genetic makeup of the patient so that these adverse reactions can be avoided.
I feel better. I feel much better. Thank you.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're going to close the phone lines for a little bit here, and we're going to be back after these words from our sponsors. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, let's take a look at Venezuela. Obviously, a lot of things going on down there. The recent embargo on their oil is a form of economic warfare. Over at Zero Hedge, they have an article asking, is Venezuela in danger of becoming another Syria? And yes, it is. The U.S. has been trying to seize control of Venezuela going all the way back to Hugo Chavez. And although this is not going to come as a surprise to anybody, the director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, has admitted the United States is engaged in a program of regime change in Venezuela. Like I said, no big surprise to anybody on that particular one. So, getting on down here, the Venezuelan sanctions. Experts are saying that Trump's embargo of oil coming from Venezuela is likely to have a very unsettling effect on the oil market. Will oil prices go up? Maybe, but most of them are saying there's going to be a lot of chaos, that it could trigger some incredible swings as the dynamics of supply and demand change drastically. Over in the Philippines, interesting article, this is in USA Today. As it loses in Syria and Iraq, ISIS establishes a new beachhead, the Philippines. Now remember, all the way back when Obama chastised the Philippines for taking a hard line on drug crime. And everybody was saying, why are you doing that? It's their country. They've got a serious drug problem down there. And if they want to take a hard line with the drug dealers and drug smugglers, why shouldn't they? And Obama went down there and said, don't you do that. Don't you dare get in the way of the CIA's drug trade. And it does look like, based on this, ISIS is now in the Philippines, because ISIS is the justification for U.S. interventions. That's the new one. ISIS is over there, we have to invade. ISIS is over here, we have to invade. So the translation of this article is the U.S. is going to invade the Philippines and kick Duterte out. And Duterte is basically out there. All of a sudden, there's ISIS and communist rebels. They are now the opposition to Duterte. So this is already smelling like another CIA covert regime change, although it's not all that covert because we see what it is that they're doing. And I'm sure Duterte does, as do other world leaders. Over at Al-Aqsa, the clashes are continuing over the Israeli restrictions. Now, Israel did take out the metal detectors, but they replaced them with TV cameras, which the worshippers at the mosque are still finding very offensive, along with the presence of the Israeli troops. And the Al-Aqsa administrator is urging worshippers to refuse to enter the holy site as a protest until all of Israel's restrictions have been reversed. And that includes the restriction that says only worshipers over the age of 50 may go on in. Now remember, Israel does not actually have legal jurisdiction over the holy site. It is basically managed by this religious committee with representatives of the major religions. It is in what is technically, under UN Security Council resolution, Palestinian territory. So Israel really did not have any authority to send their forces in there, put up metal detectors, nail up TV cameras, or anything. Meanwhile, provoking and enraging and inflaming the situation even more, Israeli settlers have occupied an historical building in the West Bank city of Al-Khalil, Hebron. And apparently they have entered this restricted building adjacent to the Cave of the Patriarchs, and they're basically seizing and holding the building. Now, the Cave of the Patriarchs is believed to be the burial site of many biblical figures, including Abraham himself. So, again, the settlers from the, and I stress this, illegal settlements, are out there just trying to fan this up. Over to the Jerusalem Post, and this is not going to surprise anybody, they're running a story. With Syria in pieces, it's time to recognize Israel's annexation of the Golan. And apparently Michael Oren is out there saying it's time for the world to recognize the Golan Heights as a part of Israel. And because Syria is fragmented with ISIS here and Assad over there, there is no Syria to negotiate with. So let's just by default say that the Golan, with all of that oil and gas, is now the property of Israel. And that's why Israel is still supporting the terrorists in the south of Syria. Now, here's an interesting story. We've all been shocked by the revelations of the torture that was being used by the United States, by Great Britain, on basically what were innocent Iraqis. I mean, that is really a black mark on the soul of the United States government, assuming they actually have one, that they were grabbing innocent Iraqis and torturing them to death to find weapons of mass destruction that never existed. Something for all you Kafka fans out there to be thinking about. But it turns out recently disclosed evidence shows that British forces in Northern Ireland during what was called the Troubles were using waterboarding and electric shock treatment on their detainees. And this is probably going to have implications on Irish-British relations, along with human rights law. So the reality is this has been going on for a long time. It was supposed to be hidden from you so that the U.S. government, Great Britain, could say, we're the good guys. But we know that torture was being used all the way back. There were waterboarding prisoners in Vietnam. Now, once again, we're seeing the military try and close ranks and protect their reputation. There was, earlier in the year, a ballistic missile intercept test failure. This was on June 22nd, actually just over a month ago, and it involved a Standard Missile 3 launched from an Aegis guided missile destroyer. And it failed miserably, and the U.S. Navy has decided that it was a sailor made a mistake, that the weapon systems are perfect, they never fail, and the only reason the test failed, it was human error, it was a gay, suicidal sailor's fault. And I use that phrase because looking back on the disaster at the gun turret on the USS Iowa, and how the official story still is that a gay sailor who was suicidal, who had just recently transferred onto that ship, decided to blow the ship up and everybody in the turret. Even though the Navy's own tests had shown that the gun propellant being used had become unstable due to improper storage and could be detonated by the ramming process. But we never make mistakes, so it had to be the dead gay sailor. I think this is more of the same here. All right, apparently Donald Trump just got done with an announcement that Foxconn, which is a company that manufactures many of the Apple products, is opening a new manufacturing plant in Wisconsin. And that is a good thing. And Trump is trying to create new jobs, but he unfortunately is losing ground against the skyrocketing retail bankruptcies and other companies that are simply shutting down, along with those that are going to robots. Apparently, the latest thing coming to your local supermarket are robot stock clerks, who, as you buy things off the store shelves, the robots will go to the back storeroom, pick up a replacement, and put it back on the shelf. So it almost seems like for every one job Donald Trump manages to create, 1,000 more jobs are lost. Right now, more than a third of California households have virtually no savings and are one disaster away from financial ruin and homelessness. Student loan debt has increased almost 500% since 2003. They've taken education and turned it into yet another. Plunge those young people onto that barbed debt hook as hard and as early as we can and never, ever, ever let them off. And that leads to this article that's over on Zero Hedge. And this is saying something that I've been saying for a very long time. The central banks are not fixing the financial crisis. The central bankers are the crisis. They are causing all of the hardship because by design, private central banks create more debt than money with which to pay the debt until the accumulated debt drags the system down. And along the way, all of the assets, the hard assets of the people and the governments are put into the bankers' pockets, like we're seeing happen right now in Ukraine, where all of these state-owned, people-owned assets are going to be privatized. Private central banking is not about banking. It's not about what serves the people in the community. It is about commandeering all of the real wealth of the planet and giving it to the bankers. It's bringing back feudalism and serfdom. Unfortunately, Congress and even Donald Trump are falling for this line that the economy will improve if we deregulate it. They're still fighting against Glass-Steagall being renewed. And apparently Trump, working with the Federal Reserve, they're now cutting back on the bank stress tests so that the banks are going to have to keep significantly less reserve capital. There's going to be no resiliency in the event of another downturn. They're just going to start collapsing. But right now it gives them more money because the banks are desperately in need of enticing more people into debt. Because the potential borrowers with good credit and easy access to financing are not interested in going further into debt. They don't have confidence in the future. So once again, the bankers, the mortgage companies, the car loan companies are going subprime. They're selling loans to people who are really not in a position to repay them. But it looks good on the balance sheets right now. And when it all falls apart down the road, they'll just blame somebody else for it. Article out of shtfplan.com. Basically saying that there is an effort right now to undermine and tear up the Constitution as the economy nears collapse, because there will be a public outcry when it happens. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why the domestic police force are being trained by these Israeli security companies to basically be brutal oppressors. They're being trained to put down a popular uprising against the bankers when it happens. All of the warning signs are out there to see. Apparently, bank spokesman Andy Gert is out there saying, we're declaring war on cash. By golly, all that money belonged to us. And we'll let you play with some of it if you work hard enough, but it's really all of our money. Okay. All right. Another indication that things are changing dramatically in the global economy. Head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, is saying that the IMF is considering moving its headquarters from Washington, D.C. to Beijing. And the move may happen in the next decade. Looking at the growth trend in China and other emerging markets versus the very obvious signs of a decline here in the United States of America. The IMF has grown very rich off of the U.S. and, for that matter, Europe, but they've got no loyalty. When the pickings get better in China, they're going to be gone. Right now, 80% of the U.S. population is burdened with debt. They're anxious about job security. By many measures used around the world, the U.S. has already declined to developing nation status. We don't have the manufacturing we used to have. Nobody wants our agriculture. The middle class and working class have been impoverished. We have an extremely wealthy elite. We do look like a banana republic by many measures. Article out of Nallert blogspot. One reason Illinois is in trouble, they have 63,000 public employees that have more than $100,000 a year salaries. That's $10 billion to the taxpayers right then and there. And that's one of the big scandals. People who manage to get into that government job situation are paid anywhere between 40 and 50% more than private sector workers doing the exact same job. And the reason the government does that is basically to buy their loyalty. People who work in government will always support the government because they don't want to take that pay hit by having to work in the private sector again. Getting on back to Obamacare, as you know, earlier today there was a straight repeal with a 2-year window for a replacement. It was voted down, and apparently it lost because 5 senators who voted to repeal Obamacare in 2015 voted against the repeal today. And I would like to know just how much stock they hold in the health insurance companies in their own personal portfolio, or what other inducements were offered to them by the health insurance industry lobbyists. Healthcare costs have become so expensive in this country, rural hospitals are at risk. Rural hospitals across Tennessee are at risk of closing. They can't balance the books between people who simply can't pay because of the high costs, people who can't afford Obamacare. The health system is beginning to destroy itself due to its excessive greed. Now, getting on over to Italy, Schultz is out there warning that if Italy is not given aid by the European Union, the refugee crisis will explode again. So Juncker finally rushed through emergency migrant crisis funding for Italy, but it may be too little too late. And then there was a dramatic court decision where the Europe's top court basically ruled that member states of the EU do have the authority to deport asylum seekers back to the first EU country they entered. In other words, if Italy tries to dump some of their migrants onto Austria, Austria now has the legal right to send them on back. It's a temporary fix. It's a patch. That's all it is. They don't know what to do with this mess. And it's very angering that Soros has spent so much money and so much of his influence on a plan that was clearly not thought all the way through for its implications. And look how much harm and suffering has resulted. We'll be right back. And aloha, America, and please don't call in. The lines are still closed. This is the last segment of our program. I want to step on back to all this stuff about Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Imran Awan, who is now facing some serious legal trouble for fraud. And, of course, he's right at the center of all this IT shenanigans going on in the Congress, spying on members of Congress, the DNC computers, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. There are rumors all over the place, no confirmation yet. Indications are that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is in some kind of a negotiation with the Capitol Police to allow them to examine her laptop and various other computer components involved in this investigation. Meanwhile, Imran Awan's lawyer Chris Gowan, is a longtime Clinton associate, and his law office just released a statement saying that there's nothing here. There's nothing to see here. It's a big nothing burger. It's all because of Islamophobia. They're only after him because he's a Muslim, and all of this nonsense is the fault of the ultra right-wing media, the Pizzagate media, and rumor mongering. There's absolutely nothing of substance in this statement. It doesn't even address what charges are being filed against him, nor does it offer a defense. This appears to be a pure public relations move to just get the corporate media to send a signal to the corporate media. Pay no attention to this. But you can almost feel a sense of panic that this might be the breaking point. Because if Awan makes a deal, if Schultz makes a deal, then this could really start to unravel things. And again, there are rumors flying about a possible announcement on this case on the Sean Hannity show tonight. So we will see what happens on that particular issue. Getting on back to the crisis in Europe, Poland is literally becoming a battleground between the globalists and the nationalists. And apparently Jarosław Kaczynski, who's considered the most powerful politician in Poland, is the architect of these judicial reforms that have caused all kinds of criticism and pressure from Brussels. Now, in the aftermath of Brexit, this is actually putting more stress across the European Union because every one of the member states wants something different from Great Britain. And this is, of course, going to complicate and slow down all the negotiations. But it's showing how much these member states of the EU are straining against each other. Meanwhile, over in Vienna, Austria, apparently the Chechens and the Arabs are clashing on the streets with baseball bats, just running around, rioting, clubbing each other, and I think it's time we have a 15-day waiting period for all sporting items. Apparently people in Europe are getting fed up with Angela Merkel acting like Germany's actually in charge of the EU. And apparently Merkel's being accused of treating Macron like he is her student. I don't know, maybe she wants to marry him or something down the road. But everyone's starting to tell Merkel, stop telling everybody else what to do. And when you look at what's going on in Germany, Merkel's not really doing a good job for Germany. Why would anybody listen to her in terms of what to do across Europe? Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. I got a bunch of stuff to do this afternoon. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller's program. Please take what you learn here, share it with everyone that you know. It does feel like the corporate media, the establishment, are really ramping up against the independent media and the truth tellers, and we need everybody out there telling the truth in order to shout them down. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.